All right, guys, day one NFL free agency is here, 2026 edition. We'll break it all down for you. Some of the biggest winners, some of the biggest moves, some of the fits that we think are going to work, some of the players that are going to teams that we're not so sure about. Maybe they overspent a little bit here. Some of these teams really open up the pocketbook. Let's dig into it all. All right, guys, before we get into today's show, real quick announcement for you. Need to make sure that you guys are getting our newsletter. Our newsletter is free. It gives you our newest content, our newest betting recommendations, and exclusive discounts that you won't find anywhere else. Go to sharp.football, click the link at the top, and join our newsletter today for free. We'll be sending out deeper analysis to that newsletter of all the big free agent signings. So if you're into free agency, you want to see players moving, we're writing articles. We're going to be mailing them out to you via the newsletter. Make sure you go to sharp.football and sign up now. Travis Etienne to the New Orleans Saints, 4 years, $52 million, $13 million per year. The upside that the Saints are going to get out of simply not playing Alvin Kamara is going to be pretty massive. Addition by subtraction. Now, Alvin Kamara still technically on the New Orleans Saints, but it was long past time for another running back to come over, take the torch. Kamara produced many great seasons down in New Orleans, was very fun for a long time, but now it's beyond time for somebody else to come in and pick up the slack. And there was a lot of slack last year. Let's talk about some of the statistics where the New Orleans Saints are going to get a lot better in the run game now. Alvin Kamara's runs last year were expected to gain 4.3 yards per carry based on blocking, some of the advanced metrics and player tracking data. Those runs gaining 4.3 yards per carry, that ranked number 6 out of 48 qualifying quarterbacks. So the 6th best upside for runs, the 6th best potential for rushing output. And yet he gained only 3.6 yards per carry, which ranked number 47 out of 48 qualifying running backs. He had minus 0.7 rushing yards over expected. That ranked dead last in the NFL. So Alvin Kamara's production on the runs that were supposed to produce based upon blocking and opportunity and where defenders were supposed to produce the 6th best mark, he produced the worst rushing yardage over expected. Out of 55 running backs last year with at least 75 runs, Alvin Kamara ranked number 52 in success rate, number 51 in EPA per rush, number 51 in yards per carry, and number 50 in yards after contact per rush. So he was terrible across the board in every single one of those metrics, bottom 5 in the NFL. This was despite facing some of the lightest boxes of any running back in the NFL. 28% of his runs came versus 8+ man boxes. This is the 3rd lowest percentage, and 68% of his runs came against 7+ man boxes. That was the 6th lowest in the NFL. In addition to signing Travis Etienne, the New Orleans Saints also went out and signed guard David Edwards from the Bills. So they are revamping their upside from a rushing perspective to help support young quarterback Tyler Shuck in his next season with the New Orleans Saints. Now, one concern, if we want to be very transparent about Travis Etienne, is the fact that in short yardage, the New Orleans Saints should not expect a whole lot out of him, which is surprising for a running back who gains this much in the free agent market. But I'll just share some of these numbers, okay? Last season, 2025, out of 52 qualifying running backs needing 1 to 2 yards on any play until first down, he ranked number 51 out of 52 in EPA per rush, minus 0.44. He ranked number 43 in stuff rate with 37% of his runs stuffed. That's out of 52 qualifying running backs. Now, if you look at the last 3 years combined, 2023, 2024, 2025 combined, Travis Etienne ranked number 61 out of 62 qualifying running backs in EPA per rush and short yardage, minus 0.35, and his stuff rate ranked 52 out of 62 qualifying running backs at 36%. So Upside over Alvin Kamara. Hasn't been very successful or productive in short yardage situations, but definitely is going to help raise the floor of the rushing attack, along with new signing David Edwards at guard for the New Orleans Saints this upcoming season. Travis Etienne to the Saints to replace Alvin Kamara. Tyler Linderbaum to the Raiders, 3 years, $81 million, $60 million guaranteed. That is an average of $27 million per year. That has blown the center market off the map. I mean, we're talking about the next closest guys to Linderbaum right now. The number 2 highest paid center is Creed Humphrey, $18 million per year. After that, it's Cam Jurgens from Philadelphia at $16 million, and after that is Connor McGovern from Buffalo at $13 million. So you've got 18, 16, 13. Linderbaum's way up here now at $27 million per year. Now, the Raiders obviously feel like he's worth it. It probably was a bidding war, very competitive. We knew that Linderbaum set himself up perfectly to cash in this free agency period. But the Raiders were in desperate need of this for a multitude of reasons. Reason number 1, Clint Kubiak. Comes from the Seattle Seahawks, where he was the offensive coordinator. Now is the Las Vegas Raiders head coach, is going to be calling plays there. Guess what he wants to do? Run the football. They had the highest run rate in the NFL last year, did the Seattle Seahawks. You're not going to be able to run the ball very frequently if you don't have a good ground game. And in order to have a good ground game, you need a good center to try to help open things up for your running backs and help dictate the flow of the offense, be that commander along the line. Now, did they have success last year? How desperate were they to get this center? Let's look at some of these numbers last year. Last year, the Raiders averaged 0.5 yards before contact per rush. 0.5. That ranked dead last in the NFL. Now, if that number sounds bad, here's the context. Not only did it rank dead last in the NFL last year, it was the worst for any team in any season since 2013. Since 2013, there have been 416 team seasons since 2013, and the Raiders ranked 416 out of 416 in yards before contact per rush. In addition, last year they ranked number 32 in yards per carry at 3.6, number 32 in stuff rate at 25%, number 32 in rate of runs to gain 1 yard or less at 37%, number 32 in EPA per rush at minus 0.2, and number 32 in rushing success rate at 31%. All of those numbers where they rank dead last in the NFL at number 32, those are all for the most part predicated on the very first statistic that I mentioned, which is yards before contact per rush. If you can't get yards before contact for your run game, if your offensive line is getting shoved into the backfield, not being able to get any sort of push or open up any sort of run lanes, all of these other statistics are just going to flow with that and move downhill to be the worst in the NFL. So when they had one of the worst yards before contact in the NFL, there's no way that they're going to have a good yards per carry, good EPA per rush, a good stuff rate, good explosive run rate, all these other things that would happen if you got some push and could open up some run lanes. That's not happening in Las Vegas, and there's no way Clint Kubiak, who wants to run the ball as much as he does, would be able to have success and operate his offense without a much improved offensive line. And getting Linderbaum is the first piece in that direction. This is an interesting fact because you have a new quarterback coming in there. Fernando Mendoza is going to be a rookie this upcoming season. You can't be behind the sticks on third down, passing the football every single third down. We've already mentioned how the Seattle Seahawks had one of the highest run rates in the NFL. And if you have Fernando Mendoza handing the ball off to Genty, getting nothing accomplished on first and second downs, and then you're suddenly in third and long, the defense knows what's going to be coming is a pass play. That's not going to be beneficial for a young quarterback either. So this, for a multitude of reasons, was a smart move. And because they had the cap space to do it, they could overpay, which is what they inevitably did here, resetting the center market in the process. Tyler Linderbaum to the Las Vegas Raiders for $81 million. Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs, 3 years, $43.05 million, $28.7 million guaranteed. On a per year basis, he is now running back 4 behind Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Derrick Henry. Let's break down some interesting stats here as it relates to the Chiefs and their need for a running back and the difference between what Kenneth Walker was dealing with in Seattle versus what he's going to be dealing with in Kansas City. The Chiefs were the only team last year to not have a single running back average over 4 yards per carry. So they struggled from their efficiency out of their running backs. Kenneth Walker now goes from the NFL's #1 most run-heavy offense in the league last year in Seattle to the #1 most pass-heavy team in the NFL over the last 5 years for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs pass the ball at one of the highest rates in the NFL, almost in a year-in, year-out basis. Now they've got Kenneth Walker. Yes, Eric Bieniemy is going to be calling the offense this year. Could they shift slightly more into the run? That remains to be seen, but definitely Andy Reid loves passing the ball, and why would you not with a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes? Last year, let's talk about box counts now. Last year, 84% of runs for the Seattle Seahawks were versus 7+ box defenders. That was the #4 highest rate for any team in the NFL. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs running backs faced just 66% of runs versus 7+ box defenders. That was the #4 lowest rate in the NFL. Similarly, let's talk about stacked boxes, 8+ box defenders. 51% of Seahawks runs were versus stacked boxes of 8+ box defenders. That number was just 32% for the Kansas City Chiefs. Once again, we're talking about the #4 highest rate of stacked boxes for the Seahawks and the #4 lowest rate of stacked boxes for the Kansas City Chiefs. In other words, Kenneth Walker is going to be in a much more favorable situation when he does get those touches. He might not need to run the ball as much. Now, granted, he was splitting the workload with Zach Charbonnet. We'll talk more about that later on, but he might be more of the bell cow type running back when the Chiefs do look to hand the ball off, and they're going to have to with the amount of money that they're paying him. Get him to that bell cow role where he is their primary running back. It doesn't come off the field nearly as often as he was last season, but he's probably going to have fewer rushing attempts overall because that's just not what the Chiefs do. However, when he does run the football, those runs are going to have some nice upside because of the lighter boxes that an offense like the Kansas City Chiefs generate for their running backs. Another interesting stat here. Despite those brutal box counts that Kenneth Walker faced last year, he ranked #2 in missed tackles forced per carry. This isn't something new for Kenneth Walker. Not only did he rank #2 last year, he ranked #1 the year before that and #2 the year before that. So for the last 3 years, Kenneth Walker each year has ranked top 2 in missed tackles forced per rushing attempt. The other thing he's got here is the vulture touchdowns that Zach Charbonnet was coming in and stealing from him. He's probably not going to have to deal with that this year if you're into fantasy football and looking at Kenneth Walker. So makes a ton of sense. Obviously, it's not cheap. Kansas City Chiefs going with new running back Kenneth Walker. Malik Willis to the Miami Dolphins. 3 years, $67.5 million with $45 million guaranteed. The main thing that stands out to me from this deal was the impetus of the deal. New Dolphins head coach Jeff Hafley was the former Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator the last 2 years. Malik Willis was the backup quarterback for most of the time over the last 2 years in Green Bay. He definitely had to come in, fill in for Jordan Love on a few occasions. Looked pretty impressive at times when he was doing that. But more than that is the simple fact that which quarterback was leading the scout team, taking the reps against Jeff Hafley's defense for the last 2 years? Malik Willis. Which coach of a team in the NFL this year during free agency would know more about the benefits and the value of Malik Willis than Jeff Hafley would? He's seen this guy go up against his defense now for several years, multiple occasions, has more information on Malik Willis than any other team does in the NFL. And they jumped to the gun to rush and go ahead and grab and sign Malik Willis. Now, there's going to be some interesting stats here about the differences from Tua to Malik Willis. The last 2 years, Tua had the #4 fastest time to throw. And over his time in Miami, this was the fastest tempoed offense from a time to throw, snap to pass out with the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa. He averaged just 2.4 seconds per attempt. In Green Bay during that time, Malik Willis averaged 2.72 seconds per attempt. That's about NFL average over the last 2 years. So significantly longer time to throw for Malik Willis than Tua in the offense previously. As a result, air yards per attempt are going to be different. Tua Tagovailoa's air yards per attempt was only 6.2. That was the 6th shortest out of 65 quarterbacks over the last 2 years. Malik Willis averaged 8.8 air yards per attempt. Over 2.5 more air yards per attempt than did Tua. Malik Willis was the number 8 deepest air yards per attempt over those 65 quarterbacks. The other thing here, the Packers offensive line that Malik Willis played behind the last couple of years, not a bad offensive line, pretty good offensive line. The Miami Dolphins offensive line is not very good. It's one of the reasons that they had to completely overhaul their passing attack with Tua and Mike McDaniel and use this quick tempo, get the ball out as quickly as possible with Tua, timing-based offense. Now that worked for a while, but now you've got a totally different quarterback. This offensive line is obviously going to change up the blocking schemes and the protections and the way that they operate, but they don't have elite offensive linemen. They don't have great pass protectors there. So the Miami Dolphins are going to have to work around that because Malik Willis is not Tua Tagovailoa, but Malik Willis obviously brings a lot of other factors to the table than did Tua at the same time. The other thing here that's interesting is you have De'Von Achane, who is one of the most effective, elusive receiving backs in the NFL. But when you have a quarterback who scrambles as often as does Malik Willis, those quarterbacks tend not to check down to running backs nearly as often. Whereas a pocket quarterback like Tua, who had sustained multiple concussions and was just content with getting the ball out quickly, is going to throw the ball a fair amount to a running back like Achane. So the upside from a receiving perspective, if you're looking at a fantasy football side of things in the pass game, probably going to drop off, I would say, somewhat substantially for Achane in this specific spot. So great signing if you are a believer in the head coach and what his thought process is, which is that I saw this guy, unlike most other coaches, and I know what he really can be in the NFL, and I'm excited to bring him in here on a nice deal. I think it's a fair deal. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits in behind this Miami Dolphins offensive line, but we'll see soon enough. Malik Willis to the Miami Dolphins. So Tua has agreed to terms with the Atlanta Falcons. They can't announce the deal until Wednesday, so we'll have to see exactly how much that is. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins are paying the vast majority of that. Tua is going to come in and potentially be the starter week 1, depending upon Michael Penix's health. Obviously, the group that drafted Michael Penix, the GM, the head coach, they're both now gone. The Falcons have a new GM, new head coach, no ties to Michael Penix. But Tua only wanted a 1-year deal in case Penix comes back, and then Tua can potentially go somewhere else after the 2026 season. The question becomes, what is exactly going to happen here with Tua in terms of what he can deliver to the Atlanta Falcons, and what should the Atlanta Falcons fan base be thinking about Tua? Well, obviously Tua fell off dramatically last year. His EPA was negative last year after being positive, plus 0.16 or better the first 3 years of the Mike McDaniel Tua Tagovailoa relationship. I think that's the point in time that you should start looking at that relationship. Was the 2022 season. They were together for 4 years. His passing yards, he had thrown for at least 260 passing yards per game on average in the 3 years prior, with 2022, 2023, 2024, but then only 190 last year, averaged more than 1 interception per game as well. Now, if you go back before this past season and just look at those first 3 years with Mike McDaniel, Tua in this passing attack, though they struggled to win the key games and make it to the playoffs and win playoff games, this offense still was effective passing the football. And Tua was more than effective passing the football in the scheme that Mike McDaniel had set up for him. This offense for those 3 years averaged number 2 in yards per attempt, number 2 in completion rate, number 2 in first down rate, number 2 in explosive pass rate, passes of 15 plus yards, number 3 in EPA per attempt, number 3 in success rate, number 3 in third down conversion rate, and number 4 in passer rating out of 64 qualifying quarterbacks. We're talking top 4 in every single one of these very critical metrics. That's where Tua was ranking. One of the keys was the quick time to throw. Tua had the number 1 fastest time to throw out of all 64 of those quarterbacks that qualified from 2022 through 2024. So why did things spiral out of control last year? Why did it fall off? Why did it get Tua benched and ultimately released? And the Miami Dolphins willing to eat over $99 million of dead cap. It got Mike McDaniel fired as well. There were a variety of factors at play here. As they relate specifically to Tua, though, one of the big ones was the timing-based passing attack started to unravel a little bit. In 2023 and 2024, Tua was throwing 40% of his passes within 2 seconds. And the NFL average was at like 2.77 seconds. He was throwing 40% in 2 seconds or less, the highest rate of any quarterback in the NFL. That dropped to below 30% last year. In 2025, 25% of his passes were being thrown in over 3 seconds after the snap. He was doing that below 20% in those prior couple of years. So his average time to throw increased dramatically from 2.3 seconds in 2023, 2.3 seconds in 2024, to 2.6 seconds last year. Now 2.3, those were both the fastest in the NFL. When he held onto the football for longer than 2.5 seconds, his passes last year were a disaster. Minus 0.18 EPA per attempt, 34% success, only 6.5 yards per attempt, and only 56% completions. These numbers throughout the NFL last year ranked between quarterback number 21 and quarterback number 35. And they were all significantly worse than prior years with Tua, as I mentioned, those other statistics where he was top 4 most seasons. Not the case this past year. Now that was 2025 only. If you go back the last 2 years, this is a problem that has been building up. When Tua holds the football for more than 2.5 seconds, he ranks 33rd in EPA, 34th in success, 42nd in yards per attempt, and 37th in interception rate out of all qualifying quarterbacks. As you know, none of these numbers are even quarterback 32 or better. There's obviously only 32 quarterbacks start in the NFL. Could some of that be the concussions he sustained? He wants to get the ball out. When he doesn't get the ball out, he goes into a fight or flight mode. He gets panicky. He throws it. It's ineffective. It's inefficient. It's inaccurate. That's a possibility. Could it be that he's grown so accustomed to functioning within that offense of Mike McDaniel, the quick passing offense, that if things go off schedule or he has to hold on to the football a little bit longer, he's not nearly as comfortable anymore because he's just been ingrained by operating in that quick strike offense so long. That's another possibility. In either case, now he's going to Atlanta and he doesn't have Mike McDaniel anymore as the offensive coordinator. Now, Tommy Rees is there. We also have Kevin Stefanski calling the offense, and we know that Kevin Stefanski liked Dylan Gabriel, so they had some effectiveness, and Dylan Gabriel does have a game that's sort of similar to Tua's in a few situations, so maybe there's some connection by the Atlanta Falcons. We know why Tua would want to go there, but maybe the Atlanta Falcons don't have a ton of money, see this opportunity, don't have to give up a lot to get Tua, need a quarterback to start the season. And there are reasons why this fits for both of these teams. But in terms of the upside and the success for Tua, it's going to be hard to operate in a system that isn't the one that he is so familiar with. And I do not think that they're going to be able to build a system that's going to get rid of the ball as quickly as he was able to do in Miami. They're going to try to bring in as much as they can, but it's just so difficult to build that system, and Mike McDaniel really did a great job of building to Tua's strengths, to hide his weaknesses, to compensate for the offensive line, and to keep Tua on the field as much as possible. You know, with these concussions, obviously a very serious situation for Tua, and they had to figure out a way to keep him on the field, and it was the quick passing as much as possible. So remains to be seen how it plays out, remains to be seen what the exact deal is, but Tua, a left-handed quarterback, so they're not going to have to flip anything once Michael Penix comes back, assuming he does and becomes the starter. Both of these quarterbacks, Penix and Tua, are both left-handed, so that is going to make life a little bit easier as well on the offense, but it's going to be interesting to see how he fits into another system that he's obviously not had to deal with since Mike McDaniel first came to the Miami Dolphins in 2022 and built this remarkable system for Tua. Let's share some more news and notes on a variety of different signings that have occurred. Not so much in depth, but let's go through some quick hitters here and just kind of riff on this a little bit. First of all, Wan'Dale Robinson to the Tennessee Titans. That was their big signing today. $78 million with $38 million guaranteed over 4 years. It's going to be interesting to see what this structure actually looks like once this contract is made public. But out of 67 wide receivers last year, and just bear in mind, last year Wan'Dale Robinson started to be utilized in a more dynamic fashion, a little bit more deeper shots to him mixed in there, and not just hook routes, out routes, things of that nature that he was doing, a little bit more down the field. And despite that, last year, 67 qualifying wide receivers. Wan'Dale Robinson ranked number 62 in success rate, number 56 in dropped pass rate, number 50 in EPA per target, and number 49 in accurate target catch rate. So big year for him, but statistically not that great. He's getting guaranteed money as wide receiver 23. Look, I know the Tennessee Titans have a new offensive coordinator, new head coach calling their defense. They wanted to go out there and get some of their guys. You know, some of these new coaches to come in, they want to get their guys. Some of the guys that they went and got were on the team that caused them to get fired in the first place. So I'm not saying every single one of these signings, it's never a good thing to go get one of your guys, right? But at times they might overvalue going after one of their guys, spending a little bit too much to ensure they get one of their guys. And then it hurts them trying to get other guys. The other thing too is, you know, is Wan'Dale Robinson that much of a unicorn? You can't find somebody else who could play the role of a Wan'Dale Robinson. You have to go and offer a $78 million contract to ensure you get him. That one was a little bit pricey for my opinion. Obviously, we want Cam Ward to have a comfortable option, a comfortable outlet, to have more success as a quarterback. Very important year 2 with Brian Daboll, but that seemed a little pricey. Steelers go out and get cornerback Jamel Dean. 3 years, $36.75 million. Jamel Dean, in my opinion, is one of the more, I don't say underrated signings of day one, but I think it's a great fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think his loss might be felt by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And most of all, I think his presence on the field wasn't fully appreciated. I'm going to read some on-off splits. Now, Jamel Dean has had his share of issues from an injury perspective. He'll miss a game here or there, maybe 2, 3, 4 games, back and forth. So the bad news is he's not always healthy. He's not sitting out there playing 17 full games each year. The good news for analysis like this is there's plenty of on-off splits. And it's not like it's a small sample size there. We've got enough data here to look at some of these on-off splits. When Jamel Dean played over the last 2 years for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here's where their pass defense ranked. Number 11 in EPA, number 14 in success, number 12 in yards per attempt, and number 10 in passer rating allowed. They were definitely above average when Jamel Dean played, and top 10 to fringe top 10 when he played. When Jamel Dean did not play, they dropped to number 32 in EPA per attempt, number 31 in success rate, number 31 in yards per attempt, and number 32 in passer rating. A little comparison here. Their EPA dropped from allowing opposing quarterbacks minus 0.01 EPA to allowing opposing quarterbacks when he was not on the field to gaining plus 0.18 EPA. From a passer rating perspective, when Dean was out there, held opposing quarterbacks to an 89 passer rating, but when Dean was off the field, opposing quarterbacks had a 112 passer rating. Last year, per Next Gen Stats, Dean allowed the 4th lowest opponent passer rating in the Next Gen Stats era last season. So I think his presence was definitely valuable for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know from a betting perspective, there were definitely games we would be circling if he's not out there. Looking to potentially fade the Bucks, play the over on the opposing team's team total. Look at some passing statistics for those opposing quarterbacks, maybe play some props, things of that nature, because his presence there was massive over the last couple of years. The statistics clearly bear that out. This team dropped to one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL when he was not out on the field, near top 10 when he was on the field. A former teammate of Jamel Dean, Mike Evans, lands on a 3-year, $60 million contract for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, last year, Evans, it was his first year where he did not hit 1,000 receiving yards. So obviously a remarkable career, and one that you would have to say was somewhat healthy, because he's able to hit 1,000 yards every single year except for last year. But we'll get into that in a second. The thing about last year was he averaged a career low 5.9 yards per target. That ranked 101st in the NFL among qualifying receivers last year. His yards per route run was 41st, despite an extremely high 27% target rate on his routes. So it's a down year across the board for Mike Evans from an efficiency perspective, let alone a volume perspective, failing to hit that 1,000-yard mark that he continuously hit. And in large part, it was due to injury last year, as well as due to the lack of efficiency. Mike Evans has had 7 documented hamstring injuries in the NFL and has had a hamstring issue every single season since 2019. He's now going to be turning 33 years old before the start of this season and is dealing with these hamstring injuries. Had a little bit more serious one last season, caused him to miss too much time. His efficiency was falling off. And is he going to a great offense with a great play caller, the solid quarterback, good offensive line? Yes. Will he be utilized when he's healthy and out there? Yes. Does he still have the same juice? Is it anywhere close? That remains to be seen. And the other thing is, I don't know what to make of this electrical substation thing, but that's obviously in San Francisco, well, Santa Clara to be precise. And Mike Evans dealing with these hamstring issues every single year since 2019. Probably not the best match made in heaven in that regard. Let's talk about match made in heaven. There's a bunch of match made in heaven in Las Vegas because these guys are just signing everybody. Spending money like it's going out of style. Center Tyler Linderbaum, wide receiver Jalen Naylor, and then on the defense, Kwity Paye, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, Malcolm Kuntz, Eric Stokes at cornerback, and they traded earlier in the day for Buffalo Bills cornerback Teron Johnson. So they have loaded up and trying to revamp their defense, spending a ton of money. We'll see where it all breaks down as we get throughout the rest of the evening and into tomorrow in terms of where they rank, but absolutely trying to overhaul things. And the other thing that is not going to be talked about today that much because it relates to the NFL draft and this is about free agency, but I shared before on my X timeline, Twitter timeline, that the Las Vegas Raiders have their #1 highest draft capital since at least 1999. The Raiders also have the 4th highest total draft capital since 1999 of any team in any year. There have only been a few teams since 1999 that have had more, and that's as far back as I took the analysis, so could have gone even beyond that. But they have a ton of draft capital in this year's draft. They go out and spend a ton in free agency, bring on new players. We already talked a bit about Tyler Linderbaum and what his presence could mean, but wide receiver, revamping the defense, getting some pressure on quarterback, getting some cornerbacks to help defend passes. A lot of work being done. They just need to hope that they're correct in their evaluation of these players, their talent evaluation of these players, because they're spending a lot of money and they got a lot of draft picks. So better hope Spytech is on the game for him. He's got his laser focus in, his tactical gear out, and does not make mistakes here, because they definitely have the opportunity to really turn this franchise around, especially with Fernando Mendoza, QB1 overall, drafting him #1 overall, and overhauling their offense and defense. A lot of opportunities here for the Las Vegas Raiders this year. All right, guys, that'll do it today for day one recap of 2026 free agency. There's still a lot to come, and we're going to be right back here with you tomorrow. So make sure that you click that subscribe button right now. If you haven't done so already, just go click it. Ray, Rich, myself, we're going to be doing multiple shows tomorrow, breaking down more day one analysis, but also day two. There's a lot that's going to probably transpire between tonight, tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon. We're going to recap all of that for you with multiple shows that are going to come out tomorrow. So make sure that you're subscribing and you don't miss out on that. In addition, make sure that you've subscribed to our free newsletter. You want betting advice, you want more analysis, you want detailed articles recapping some of these landing spots for these free agents. Go to sharp.football, takes a couple of seconds, click the link at the top, and you can access our mailing list, sign up over there. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Go,